Hi everybody, this is Brian Cognato with Senior Core. We're going to go ahead and get started, but before we really get into the content for today, we just want to go over some housekeeping notes. First, all of your lines are on mute right now. We can do that centrally, but we also request that you double check us and put your lines on mute too. You can do that by pressing *6 on a touch-tone phone or using the little blue microphone button if you're joining via Skype. Once again, that's *6 on your touch-tone phone or using the little blue microphone button if you're on Skype. We do hope to have opportunities for open lines and Q&A later today, but in order for us to do that, we really do need all of our listeners to be on mute as well so that we can open the lines up. So one more time, please press *6 on your touch-tone phone or use the little blue microphone button on Skype. And I'm going to pause for just a second to allow you to do that. Okay, I want to check my own microphone as well. It would be great if some of the people who are joining us via Skype can use their chat window to just put in a smiley face or a thumbs up or an okay. I've seen ninjas that are dropped in via Skype. Anything at all to let me know that we are coming in loud and clear. That would be very helpful. Hola, okay, great. It looks like we are coming through okay. Glad to hear it. This call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, you can disconnect at any time. Finally, we do strongly encourage you to join via Skype via the webinar component of today if you haven't already. You can find the link to that on the Managing Senior Core Grants page. Just go to Google or Bing, your search engine of choice, enter Managing Senior Core Grants, and then look for the link for training and technical assistance calls. We'll have some visuals that I think are a little bit helpful, and it also allows for just a little bit more creativity. Like I said, we do hope to be able to open the lines for open Q&A as well, but Skype's a great way to participate. You can drop questions into Skype at any time, and we'll try to pick them up as we go. In addition, Appendix C is available on the Managing Senior Core Grants page. And Appendix C is a fantastic resource to have available for today's call as well. We'll be referring to it several times. So if you want to go to the Managing Senior Core Grants page and open up Appendix C right now, I think it'll serve you well as we go through the content here for today. With that, I want to introduce Erin McGrath, the Senior Core Deputy Director.
Hi folks, I know this is a really busy week and most of you are making preparations to be with family and lots of cooking to be done, so I really appreciate you taking the time this week to spend a little bit of time with us to talk about this opportunity for evidence-based programming. So you know we've been talking about this concept for at least a year, probably longer, and this is a very common trend in funding in general and certainly within the federal government. And so this is an opportunity for folks to apply for a one-time augmentation, and we're going to get into all the details and process and talk about all that good stuff, but this is a really big opportunity for us. They don't come up very often, but we also recognize that not everyone is sort of in the position to take advantage of it, and so that's not to say that we won't revisit this concept or do it in a different way next time. But this particular opportunity is really for grantees that are ready to take on this level of programming, and we are grateful that you're here to kind of share and learn a little bit more about that to see if it's right for you.
Great, thanks, Erin. With that, let's get into some of the content for today. We're going to talk about four major things. We're going to go over the basics of what you'll find in Appendix C to the invitation to apply. We'll talk about what evidence-based programming is and how this opportunity supports that. We'll look at some specific examples of evidence-based programming in practice, and then we'll close with some talk about logistics and how to apply. So let's go over the basics. First of all, Appendix C to the invitation to apply is available right now on the Managing Senior Core Grants page, as we already discussed. It's been there since November 1st, 2016. All grantees who are renewing their 3-year grant in FY 2017 are eligible. So that means that this is an opportunity that's available to all grantees who are getting ready to start a new 3-year performance period. The grantees that renewed in FY 16 had this opportunity last year, and we hope that the grantees who are renewing in FY 18 will have that opportunity next year too. This year, it is only available, though, to those grantees that are starting a new 3-year performance period. You'll see that there's a certain amount of money available for senior companion programs, foster grandparent programs, and RSVP programs. and all applications are due April 17th, 2017. This is something we're going to come back to a few different times during this webinar because it's a little bit unusual. But what that means is that depending on when your grant starts, your process for applying is going to be slightly different. For our quarter 2 and quarter 3 cohorts, that means the grants that start either on January 1 or April 1, you'll actually be submitting your application for this augmentation as an amendment because you'll have already applied for your typical renewal. You'll already have submitted that renewal application by the time this deadline rolls around. So for those 2 cohorts, it'll be an amendment. For the cohort of grantees that's often called quarter 4, with performance periods that start July 1, you'll actually submit this with your full application. You'll submit it with your full application. However, you will need to submit it 1 week earlier then. So you'll be submitting both your request for an augmentation, if you choose to submit one, and your full application 1 week earlier if you fall into that last cohort. It's a one-time award, but expendable over all 3 years. So you'll get the award once, the obligation will occur once, but then you can spend those funds over the full 3 years, however is appropriate for the program. We're going to get into a lot of these details in more depth, but that's a real high-level overview. And once again, you can find more information about all of this in Appendix C to your invitation to apply, which is available on the Managing Senior Core Grants page. As Aaron already mentioned, this is an opportunity and it's not an expectation. It's not a requirement. We know that our grantees are doing all kinds of fantastic work in lots of different ways all across the country. And this specific opportunity may not be right for all of you, and that's okay. There's nothing bad happens if you don't apply. There's no cost to not applying. It's just an opportunity when there's the right fit. And that's really what we want to emphasize, that it's about finding the right fit. And that if you find that some of these programs that we're going to talk about in a minute are a good fit for you, by all means apply. But do not feel like it's an expectation or that it's a requirement. This won't be a good fit for all of our grantees, and that's okay. So if that's the high-level overview of what we're talking about, let's look more specifically at what evidence-based programming is and how it relates to this opportunity. I pulled a definition out, and this definition is actually, I think, the first sentence in Appendix C. And we're going to go over it, and then we're going to break it apart a little bit. Evidence-based programming refers to a set of activities and practices supported by a theory of change, tested through a rigorous impact evaluation. These impact evaluations have demonstrated a causal relationship between the specified program activities and the outcomes. Okay, so that's the definition of an evidence-based program. A set of activities and practices supported by a theory of change, tested through rigorous impact evaluation, and it has demonstrated a causal relationship. Many of you may be familiar with the Continuum of Evidence that CNCS uses in lots of its communication, which says that you start from having a theory of change, an idea about how your program is supposed to change the world, and then you walk that through these different levels of measuring and evaluating your impact. It starts by measuring your performance, which all of you are already doing through the national performance measures. It moves on to looking at the outcomes, right? Because we have that difference between outputs and outcomes in the national performance measures. And then you evaluate your outcomes. And finally, at the highest level, you have what's called an impact evaluation. That's a very high standard of evidence. And this opportunity, this evidence-based programming augmentation, it is focused on that highest level of evidence. It's focused on programs that have undergone a thorough impact evaluation. We'll talk about this in a lot more depth, but the basic idea is we want to give all of you an opportunity to partner with a program that's already reached that level of evidence, to import some of what they're doing, or maybe even to expand some work that you're already doing that's at that level of evidence. But it is focused at that highest level, and we'll talk about what it means to get to that highest level. But what we want to emphasize right now is that we know that that's not where all of our grantees are right now, and that's okay. We have a portfolio with diverse levels of evidence, and we are committed to helping you continue to move down that evidence continuum. But just because this opportunity is focused on that highest level of evidence, it doesn't mean that we don't value the work that you're doing all across the continuum. This is just one piece of the puzzle. This is just one specific opportunity. And even though it's at that highest level, we are going to continue to partner with you and work with you to support what you do at all levels. Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think I want to point out that I think webinars like this, and we have a series of other ones. We did them last year at the regional events. We'll again continue to keep talking about this topic. We recognize that there's more training and technical assistance and work to be done for the other parts of this continuum. But really, this particular funding opportunity is, as Brian mentioned, really for the one end. That's not to say that we're not committed to helping people work through what it means to sort of move along that middle there. So your state offices and obviously the training folks, Brian here at headquarters, and the associations, as we kind of work together, I think there's a lot more for us to do in that middle part. And so I just want to kind of make that commitment to you that we're not done with this conversation. We don't intend to only have one conversation here at the end of the spectrum, but this particular opportunity, the funding that we have available, really is for programs that are able to function at that particular level.
Great. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is actually interesting about this opportunity is, in a way, it kind of almost allows you to get a little piece of work at that far end, no matter where you are now. Because as we'll say, it's really about importing or partnering with programs that have already reached that level. So no matter where you are now, you could actually take advantage of this opportunity if you see some programs that are right for you.
That's right. And I think, not all stations necessarily may be functioning. I mean, you might have a program that has, some placements that are functioning at one end and some that are another. So this is an opportunity to kind of think creatively about your program and the direction it's going in.
Fantastic. So let's talk about what it means to be at that level. How do you get to this impact evaluation level? And I like to do this through an example. Let's say that I'm sick on Monday, and then I eat an apple on Tuesday, and on Wednesday I feel better. Sounds great, right? As it happens, I was actually sick on Monday. It's now Tuesday, and I feel pretty good. So maybe I did eat an apple somewhere in between. But let's just say, for this theoretical example, I'm sick on Monday, I eat an apple on Tuesday, I feel better on Wednesday. I could maybe think that the apple is what cured me. It's a magic apple. It cured the common cold. I am so lucky I found the magic apple. But some of you may be thinking that something else could have happened between Monday and Wednesday that made me feel a little bit better. And I want everyone to just take a second and think think of something else that may have occurred between Monday and Wednesday that may have made me a little bit better. And if you're joining on Skype, I'd love to see some people make some suggestions. What else could have happened between Monday and Wednesday in addition to me eating this apple that could have made me feel a little bit better? Okay, Carrie says better sleep. Do we have any other suggestions? Saw the doctor, started some medicine. Yeah, you've got the idea. We had the idea of just time passing. You might get better just as time goes on. And also medicine. If I'm sick on Monday, I eat an apple on Tuesday, and I'm better on Wednesday, we don't know what else is going on in the middle. And maybe I'm getting better sleep. Maybe I'm taking medicine. And those are the things that are actually helping me improve. So let's take an example that's a little bit more applied. And I like to use the example of a literacy program because it's easy to visualize. I know not all of our attendees here are in that line of work. I know that we've got some senior companion programs. But let's just go and do this as a thought experiment. Let's say I've got a program that's working with kids and it's targeting literacy. It wants to help those kids improve in their reading. And over the course of a year, I look at the end and I see, these kids have actually improved in their reading skills. After receiving my program for a year, they have improved. And it seems like maybe the program, or what you'll sometimes hear called the treatment in evaluation circles, helped contribute to that improved reading. Now that sounds great, but I could also step back and think about maybe some other things that have helped these kids improve over the course of a year. And I want everybody to just take a second now and see if they can think of one or two things in addition to a program that might help young people learn to read, even while they're going through that program. Let's think of a couple of things. And if you're joining via Skype, I'd love to see a couple of suggestions about what else might be going on here that could help these young people learn to read better after going through my program for a year. Okay, Maria said parent education, better nutrition. Yeah, there's, I think, a growing body of research that links nutrition to academic performance. So Maria, thanks for that suggestion. Are there any other suggestions about things that maybe also could have contributed to the success of these young people over the course of a year? They're teachers, yeah. Thanks, Triste. Right? These are the two things that we came up with, teachers and parents. There could be other things too, but the fact is that we don't know necessarily at the end of the year whether it was the program that made the biggest difference or the teacher or the parents. And an evidence-based program is a program that's actually gone through an extra level of evaluation that allows us to rule out those other causes. So an evidence-based program is a program that has gone through a specific type of evaluation that allows us to say, all else being equal, we know this program will have these effects in any context. So it doesn't matter who the teachers are. It doesn't matter what's going on at home. The program has been shown to have effects, all else being equal. And that's really the key phrase you're looking for in an evidence-based program, all else being equal. Those kinds of evaluations can be done in a few different ways. Usually they're done by randomly assigning participants either to one program or to another, or maybe not to receive the program, or certain statistical methods. But the idea is you're trying to find out what this program causes, all else being equal, really trying to isolate its effects. And there's another thing that makes these programs special. They have a set of standards to ensure that they're implemented the same way in different contexts. The secret sauce that makes them effective, right? There's a secret sauce, something that makes this program what it is all across the country, a recipe of key components that make this program what it is. So if you're implementing it in Washington, D.C., for example, it's exactly the same as if you're implementing it in Utah. And the fact is that when you look at evidence-based programs, you'll see that the specificity of these recipes varies. We pulled out two examples that you'll actually see in Appendix C to kind of illustrate this. One is Reading Partners, which is a program you may be familiar with. It's in Appendix C, and you can find more information about it there. And they target young people who need some help with reading with a very specific range. They have to be behind grade level a specific amount. They have a standard assessment, a standard curriculum, a site coordinator, and they even have a dedicated space. Now you can compare that to another evidence-based program that you'll find in Appendix C, Big Brothers Big Sisters Community-Based Mentoring Program, and it's much more flexible. They serve young people between the ages of 6 to 18, generally low income, single parent. They have a range of number of times per month that they meet with these young people. They have a range of the amount of time a meeting can take place, and they even customize the activities to the participant. The metaphor I like to use to make sense of this is cooking versus baking. I'm curious, our Skype participants, who here prefers baking versus cooking? I'll say I much prefer cooking because cooking gives you an opportunity to improvise a little bit, to add a dash of this, to cook it a little bit longer, to throw something else in, but baking is really precise. You need to follow the recipe exactly. So Skype participants, I'm wondering, what do you prefer, cooking or baking? Aaron, while we wait for some responses to come in, are you a cooker or a baker?
I'm really neither.
You're
but
neither.
I think
No.
would probably go for cooking.
You would probably go for cooking. Okay. As I see some responses coming in over Skype, it looks like cooking has the early lead. Of course, it doesn't really matter what we like better. The point is that there's a range of specificity. If you're baking, you've got to have pretty specific amounts, and you've really got to follow the recipe to a T. It's chemistry that's going on. But if you're cooking, you've got a little bit more freedom. And when we look at evidence-based programs, they all have a recipe. They all have a secret sauce. The question is just how much freedom do they give you? And that's going to vary program by program. But this recipe is really what allows it to be implemented the same way all across the country. So let's look back at our definition and pull all this together. An evidence-based program refers to a set of activities and practices supported by a theory of change. Well, that set of activities and practices, that's the special sauce. That's the recipe. That's the defined package that makes these programs the same no matter where they're implemented. And they've demonstrated a causal relationship between specified activities and outcomes. That's that evaluation that allows us to know that this program has these effects no matter the context. And it's the combination of those two things, the secret sauce and the evaluation, that demonstrates that these programs cause this change that make evidence-based programs so special. We could spend a lot of time talking about evidence-based programs, and as Aaron already said, we have some plans over the course of the year to continue to come back to this and to really deepen our understanding of what this means. But the fact is, for this opportunity, you don't really need to have a thorough understanding of what evidence-based programming means to take advantage of it. If you look at Appendix C, you'll see that there are two pathways there to take advantage of this opportunity. Pathway A asks you to look at a list of programs that we've reviewed and vetted and can say are evidence-based, and just look to incorporate those into your own programs. And those are also programs that have a volunteer component. So that's a list of programs that we know about, that we have said, yes, these programs are evidence-based and have a role for volunteers. And all you need to do, if you want to, is look at those programs and see if it fits your community and your stations. You don't need to go through an evaluation process. Instead, they're already there. We have another pathway with more flexibility, pathway B, and what that allows you to do is identify an evidence-based program that's not on our list. It's just impossible for us to say that we know everything that's out there. There are new programs coming out and being evaluated every day. So pathway B gives you more flexibility, but even still, we've given you two other tables of resources where you can go and find other programs. Programs that do different things. We may not know as much about them, but if you find them and they meet the standard, you can submit them to us for consideration. What unites both pathways is that this opportunity is asking you to import or partner with a pre-existing program. It's really about taking these pre-existing evidence-based programs and incorporating them into what you do. And we'll look at some specific examples about how that can be done. But that's a little bit of a change from what you may have heard from some of your peers who went through this process last year. We're not looking for you to evaluate your own program this year, at least not with this specific opportunity. Instead, it's really about taking advantage of these programs that are already there. So if you look at Appendix C, and once again, I really do encourage you to go ahead and open that up right now if you have an opportunity, you'll see Table 1. And Table 1 is the list of evidence-based programs that have volunteers that we're aware of. And as you go across, you'll see 4 columns: the program name and developer website, which is just where you can go to find more information, the demonstrated impacts, the mode and duration, and the evidence review. To tie this back to our definition, the demonstrated impacts are those outcomes that you're having, right? The outcomes that you're having. The mode and duration, that's the secret sauce. That's the recipe that allows this program to be implemented consistently all over the country. And the evidence review is the evidence that we have that this program has the effects we think it does. The research that has ruled out those other possible causes. By now, you're probably looking for some specific examples. So let's look at some more detailed information about how programs within Senior Corps, including foster grandparent and senior companion programs, have taken advantage of this opportunity. And as we go through this, we really do want to reemphasize that it's about fit. Basically, these programs are tools. Tools for you to consider whether or not they make sense with your community need and your stations. As Aaron already mentioned, we know you've probably got a diverse variety of stations. Some are probably doing fantastic work. Some are probably pushing the barriers of evidence-based programming already. Others may be happy with a simpler form of programming, and that's okay. The question here is, do you find a good fit between these programs that are available and your community need and your stations? In 2016, as we already mentioned, we had a cohort of grantees who are renewing go through this process. And the award size ranged from $7,000 to $127,000. So that's a pretty big range. Both urban and rural and really programs all in between that spectrum were able to take advantage of it. And they served additional persons ranging from 33 to 600. So a pretty big range there, about a 200% gap between the smallest and the biggest. And their activities fell broadly into 4 categories: education, health education, senior exercise, and care for the elderly. Obviously, with this audience, we'll be looking mostly at education and care for the elderly. Aaron, did you have something that you wanted to add on this point?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've been encouraging folks to think about is that we are not looking to only fund sort of the biggest programs. So if your program is really ready to start smaller, I encourage you to apply. We were really looking at the ability for the program to be successful. So the appropriate size is really important, more than kind of just going in for blockbuster numbers. So if you think you can start small, but you need to do a little bit of groundwork, I think that that's appropriate to request funds for. Again, we're really going to be scoring this and reviewing this based on your capacity to keep fidelity to the program model and hopefully find some success.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. So we're going to go through some specific examples. Before I pull them up, I do want to say that these are composite examples. So we looked at the programs that were successful last year and kind of mixed and matched some details and tried to make them more general. So nothing you see here is exactly a program that we saw last year, but they're really combinations of programs that we tried to put together in a way to make them relevant to the biggest possible audience. We got successful applications in 11 different states, ranging from New Hampshire all the way to California and Oregon, and everything in between: Alabama, Indiana, Missouri, Ohio, Minnesota, and Kansas. I think I mentioned all of them. Did I mention California, Aaron, just then? Yeah. So 11 different states, really representing the whole country. And this was our smallest cohort last year. Our grantees who were renewing last year is the smallest cohort. So last year we had programs in 11 states. This year we expect probably to have a little bit more because it is a bigger cohort going through this year. The first example we're going to spotlight is an education program, so most relevant to our foster grandparent attendees, taking place in a small Midwest city and implemented by a local human services nonprofit. The program was based on Experience Corps, which is a program that you'll find in Table 1 of Appendix C this year, and that focuses on reading comprehension for high-need youth. This application did go ahead and they engaged new stations and they recruited new volunteers to support this work. When we talk about the budget component this year, I'm going to add a little asterisk to this, but I want to point out that it is possible that programs can take this opportunity to engage new stations and volunteers. As we'll see, you don't have to do that, but it is an option. They tied it to their work plans in ED2, which is participation in K-12 programs, and ED27, which is improved academic engagement. That's the outcome. It served an additional 114 persons at a cost of about $80,000. And those costs went to staff management, volunteer recruitment and recognition, because they were, like I said, recruiting some new volunteers, training those volunteers to execute this program, and supplies. So that's just a high-level example of an education program. I should mention now that these slides are actually available on the Managing Senior Corps Grants page already. So if you want to go back and look at these examples when we're done here, you can do that. I did already mention the session is being recorded. Of course, we'll post the recording as well. The next example we want to look at is in senior care, so more relevant to our senior companion attendees. We pulled some examples for this. They were working in a large suburban to rural county in the Pacific Northwest, a county that kind of spanned those different communities, implemented by a county social services agency. The program that we're spotlighting here is Senior Reach, which is, again, a program that's available in Table 1 of Appendix C, so you can go there to find more about it. And what that does is it focuses on outreach and care to older adults in need of support. This program requires a license. That's the key piece of implementation. You need to buy a license, but that license comes with 3 years of technical support to allow you to really implement the program with fidelity, to keep that special sauce special. They tied it to H8 and H9 in their work plans, which will be familiar to our senior companion programs, as an output for independent living and an outcome related to social ties and support. With this program, they're able to serve an additional 240 persons at a cost of about $60,000. The costs included licensing, that was a big driver of costs in this model, training logistics, staff management, and again, supplies for volunteers. So those are just two high-level illustrative examples of how programs are able to take the tools that you will now see in Table 1 and make them relevant to their stations and their community need. We've covered a lot of ground now. We've talked about evidence-based programming. We've talked about some specific examples. And I think now's a good time to take some questions. So you can drop a question in on Skype if you're joining us via the webinar. Feel free to type a question into that chat bar there. And I'm also going to go ahead and take our lines off of mute. We've got a small enough group that I think we can do that. But before I do that, I want to ask everyone who's joining to do one of two things. If you're joining via phone, please press *6 to mute your line if you don't plan to ask a question. Once again, that's *6. And if you're joining via the webinar, please hit the little blue button underneath your Skype window. And if you're doing both, because I know sometimes attendees will do both, go ahead and do both of those things. When we open up the lines, everyone's line will be open, which means if you are talking to a colleague, we can hear it, which means if you put us on hold, we can hear it, which means if you're driving, we can hear it. So please take 1 second right now and press *6 and hit the blue microphone button on your Skype window. I'm going to pause for just a second to allow everyone to do that. Okay. And now I'm going to take the lines off of mute. Please do feel free to use the Skype chat window. I haven't seen any questions come in over Skype yet, but if they do, we'll answer them. You're going to hear a short announcement as I unmute the lines.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
Okay, lines are open. Do we have any questions?
No questions?
Hi, this is Heather Hohensee from Louisiana.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
Good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
So I just want to make sure I understood correctly. So basically what you're saying is, for example, we have our foster grandparent program, and it's run according to the foster grandparent, grant guidelines. What you're saying is next year we could try to incorporate into that using our grandparents, but to function in a different program. So one of these programs suggested, so we would reach out to one of these programs and say, we want to work with you so that some of our foster grandparents can participate in the activities that you do. Is that correct?
That's correct with a couple caveats. The way I would look at it is, picture that typical Venn diagram, right? We've got our foster grandparent program, and it's set up a certain way, and there are certain requirements, that one-to-one relationship, the number of hours, right? You've got your foster grandparent program package. And then we have these other programs that are structured in different ways. They're maybe using a specific curriculum, maybe searching for a specific outcome. And if you can take that foster grandparent tool and combine it with that other program tool, that's really what we're talking about. So you still need to abide by all the typical foster grandparent program design pieces. But there are grantees who've been able to take that and combine it with these other programs, and that's really what this augmentation is about. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, because our foster grandparent program here is actually under the umbrella of Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I'm the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and the foster grandparent program director, works with me. So what I'm thinking is what you're saying is what I could do is say I work with our foster grandparent program director, and what she does is some of the grandparents that she recruits, we have them go through the foster grandparent recruitment program, but with the intention for them to be Big Brothers or Big Sisters. So after they go through foster grandparent program, then they would go through my Big Brothers Big Sisters particular process and then actually act as Big Brothers or Big Sisters.
Hi, this is Erin. I missed a little bit of the detail there, but I think I got the general gist. I think that's a possibility. I think a couple things. You obviously need to keep the integrity of the foster grandparent structure, and then the integrity of the Big Brothers Big Sisters intervention as it's described in the research around evidence. So that I'm not actually particularly familiar with how that model is described in Table 1. But you might need to just go through that and make sure that you're keeping to that particular, the way that intervention is delivered. And then obviously there will be a data collection piece as part of that as well. And so I think if you can kind of negotiate that with the foster grandparents, I think that it would be a great partnership.
Does that help, Heather?
Yeah, so basically they would have to go through two recruitment or filtering processes, first through the foster grandparent and then through whatever other program we want them to participate to.
Right. So you might have a different a series of trainings to go through the evidence-based model. You might have, sort of other things that they need to do in order to be part of delivering the intervention that's considered evidence-based. But yes.
Okay. And the reason you guys are offering this because you feel that in some markets, the foster grandparents, perhaps we're not recruiting enough people because they're not interested in that particular program. So by introducing other programs, we could increase our services and numbers. Is that?
This is not at all driven by recruitment. I think this is really driven by the idea that a lot of funding, including federal funding, is moving to a place where we are sort of funding and looking to build a body of evidence within our existing programs. And so I think not all foster grandparents programs have sort of those natural station community-based relationship partners to implement evidence-based programming. So this funding is really designed to begin to seed some of that, to formalize it a little bit more, to kind of begin to spread that practice and then lift it up to see what else we can replicate in other places. But it's not really driven by recruitment.
Yeah, and I think it's important just to emphasize that in no way, shape, or form are we suggesting that this should replace typical foster grandparent or senior companion programs. It's just if there is a foster grandparent program that can take advantage of these models, so much the better, because these models have been proven to have specific effects. So, of course, we would want our volunteers to participate in programs that have reached this high level of evidence, but it is not at all intended to in any way supplant the typical foster grandparent program model. And there's one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. And there's one more point I should add here, which is that we often get questions that are a variation of either A, well, what about this specific program? And it's often a program we don't know very much about. Or B, well, I'm trying to think about how this program meets my needs. And both of those questions are great questions for your state program officers. We'll talk about that at the end. Your state program officers can help you with both of those. And then when you look at Appendix C, you'll also find more information about how to assess whether or not you are holding true to the program model, which, as Aaron mentioned, is a really important part of the selection criteria. Thanks for that question, Heather. Do we have any other questions? Lines are still open, and of course you can still submit a question over Skype. We will have another opportunity to ask questions before we leave here today, but I don't want to leave any questions unanswered. Questions going once? Going twice? Okay. If there are no more questions, I'm going to mute all the lines again, and we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about the logistics this year a little bit more, and then we'll have another opportunity to ask questions. So don't worry, you will have more chances.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
Okay, the lines are back on mute. Let's talk about the logistics of how to apply this year. Up on your screens, if you're joining via the webinar, I pulled out an excerpt from the invitation to, from Appendix C. Right on the first page there. And what the instructions say are that your request should not exceed 4 pages, not including citations or budget information. Using the template below, create a narrative with all requested information. And that's the point that we want to emphasize, that we are really at this stage just requesting a narrative. We're asking you to tell us a story, a short story, 4 pages, and you'll see that there are actually, I think, 11 questions that we ask you to answer in those 4 pages. Just give us an idea of how you would implement this program if successful. We're not asking you to submit completely revised work plans. We're not asking you to submit a completely revised budget. Instead, we're just asking you to submit this description of how you would implement this program. And again, that should be guided by, really it should be directly in response to, the 11 questions that you'll see in Appendix C. When it comes to the budget information, you'll see a similar theme. We're asking for the breakdown top line across all 3 years. So your year 1 total request, your year 2 total request, and your year 3 total request. And then, of course, how those all add up. And then we're only asking for a detailed breakdown in funds for year 1. We're only asking for a more detailed breakdown in year 1. And even then, we're still just asking for a description. We're not asking for a new budget. We're just asking for a description of the cost in year 1, along with those top line numbers across all 3 years. We're also asking you to tell us a little bit about the sources and amounts of non-CNCS support. which is a good transition to start to think about some other budget considerations. There is a limit to the amount of funds that you can request, and it's your base. The limit is that your base and the augmentation together cannot exceed $500,000, which means, let's say that you have $100,000 in annual base federal funding. Your augmentation request could not exceed $400,000. The maximum request is your annual baseline federal funding minus $500,000. I apologize, I actually reversed those. It's $500,000 minus your annual base federal funding. So once again, if your base federal funding is $200,000, your maximum augmentation request would be $300,000, adding up to $500,000. You'll get that full amount once, but you can expend it over 3 years. And all of the typical funding requirements apply, including the match and the direct benefit ratio. So that's something that you need to think about very carefully if you're planning to use this for something like VSYs. It will change your direct benefit ratio. And here's a really important point. This is a one-time augmentation, which means that it will not be added to your base federal funding for future years. Earlier, I mentioned that some programs last year use this to recruit new volunteers, and that's fine. That's fantastic. But if you're doing that, you need to make sure that you have a plan to sustain it, because this funding will not be renewed along with your base federal funding after those 3 years. I think that's a really important point for program design, to know that this is like a surge of funding, a time-limited surge of funding for 3 years. And then after that, this funding will go away. You may be able to secure other funding to sustain that activity, but think about it as a one-time surge. And that's why it's really nice for things like a license, like training, like costs that really allow you to make a shift in a short amount of time. And you're going to want to be careful if you start to use it for ongoing volunteer costs, because again, it will not be added to your base federal funding. In addition, we do have, excuse me, there is one request for additional information that comes along with using that Pathway B. You'll remember there's Pathway A, where you choose an evidence-based program from a list that you'll find in Appendix C, but then Pathway B gives you more freedom to choose your own. Just know that if you're taking Pathway B, we will require a little bit of additional information, so that way we can verify that it is an evidence-based program. And there's more information about what that specific information is in the in Appendix C itself. We already talked a little bit about the selection criteria. There are 4 selection criteria. We're looking for a clear model and that your activities are aligned with that model, fidelity to the program, your strategies for volunteer training, placement, and supervision, and that you're considering appropriate changes to the budget and work plan. Again, as with everything I'm saying today, more information is available in Appendix C. I do think that this is a good time to circle back to something that Aaron already said. If you'll notice, there's nothing in here about a huge blockbuster number of beneficiaries or volunteers. It's really about fidelity and quality, the quality of your implementation.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you should also know that last year we used a combination panel of program officers from the corporation, from the state offices, as well as a handful of external experts that had expertise in our sort of most common areas of request. So education, health education, and some of the like programming, senior health education and exercise and all that good stuff. So we do have some, it'll be reviewed by both internal and external folks.
Great, thanks, Aaron. We want to go back over timing because this is a little bit unusual. Once again, all applications are due April 17th, 2017. So that means that if your grant is renewed on January 1st or renewed on March 1st, I'm sorry, that should actually say April 1st. That's a typo. On April 1st, you will submit your application as an amendment. Once again, that's as an amendment. However, if your grant starts July 1st, you will submit it 1 week early and with your full application. So again, that's an amendment for our quarter 2 and quarter 3 renewals, and with your full application, and actually we're requesting it 1 week early for our quarter 4 renewals. I should also reemphasize here, this year the opportunity is only available to grantees who are renewing in 2017. Our continuing grants will have other opportunities. Last reminder, prepare your application outside of e-grants. That's probably not new to most of you. It's always a good practice whenever you're preparing something to submit in e-grants to really prepare it outside of the system and just bring it into the system when you're ready to submit. But that's even more important now, especially for those cohorts who are submitting these requests as amendments. And that's because if you have some information in there for your Appendix C application and you need an amendment for any other reason, any of the dozens of reasons that our grantees occasionally need amendments, it'll just make the logistics a little bit more complicated. You might have to take that information out and then put it back in. Your life will just be much simpler if you prepare your application outside of eGrants and only enter it into that application when you're ready to submit. That's all the content that we had. I mentioned that we would have another opportunity for questions. So let's go ahead and take some more questions. We've got about 15 minutes left, so plenty of time. Once again, feel free to type a question into our Skype chat window, and we can answer it. And we're going to open up the lines as well. Please wait for the announcement for the lines to open.
Presentation mode is now disabled.
Someone has us on hold. Oh, great. Fantastic. Oh, no, I still hear it in the background. If you can hear me, please do not put us on hold. It's a little bit disruptive, but hopefully I think we can probably work through that. Are there any questions?
Hi, this is Susan. I'll work through the lovely music.
Thanks, Susan. It is
Let's all
Susan,
sing
isn't
along.
it?
Hold on. Oh, there we go. You're welcome. Hey, so I guess I'll ask a question in reference to what you just said. The existing folks who probably just submitted their first year, July 2016, because there seems to be a lot more information, a lot more education about these opportunities. You said they're going to have a potential to apply for something in the near future if they hadn't already applied. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So one clarification. I didn't necessarily say near future. You know, this year, this opportunity is focused on grantees who are renewing this year. In terms of our broad strategy, Erin, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so starting last year, we wanted to make it available to folks in their renewal year. So we'll go through 3 years, making sure that everyone has an opportunity to apply with their renewal application. And a lot of that, I'm making the commitment for 2018 knowing that we don't have a budget. I have no idea, but we're sort of moving in good faith, and as long as the appropriations are there, we'll continue to do that for the cohort that renews in 2018. I think that for right now, that's what we had the money for this folks at that particular end of the spectrum. I think what Brian is talking about is sort of our general consensus, and a lot of that will really change under a new administration when we have a new director of Senior Corps. But I think that we are committed to finding other opportunities to promote the use of evidence within our programs, whether that be through funding or training and technical assistance or some combination of that. But those plans will firm up under the new administration.
Okay, that would be great, because for the folks who came out the first round, we just didn't have time to grasp it all and be educated. And now as we get more, it's becoming, the opportunity seems a little something we could take advantage of. Thanks very much.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's crystallizing for us as a field even more broadly, and we're going to continue to kind of move in that direction. I think we learned a lot of valuable lessons in terms of process last year. So the opportunity is similar. We've narrowed it actually a little bit. I think it was pretty wide open last year, but we've narrowed it a little bit, but we've also made the process a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Susan. I'll add one note to that, which is just to remember that these partnerships sometimes do take a lot of time to develop. So even if you're not up this year, it's probably a good idea to take a look at what's available and maybe start making some of those connections and start to see what's possible, because that's only going to benefit you down the line. These programs do sometimes take some time. Are there any other questions on the line? Lines are open.
This is Susan again. I'll ask one more question then for my foster parent, because we are going to be going into the first year for foster grandparents. Do you have any advice on bringing an evidence-based program to schools, a new program to them? Is there some learning that you've received from the programs that are doing it? Some of the schools we're partnered with are like, we already have what we have, we like. We don't want a new something, and they may not be on your list. So is there some support or suggestions you have?
That's a great
introducing
question.
it to the schools.
I think that's actually a really great topic for us as we sort of, as a field, come together and figure out lessons learned. I think we would be very interested in exploring that further. But I will also say that we want this list to grow. I mean, this is not the definitive list. There are a lot more things out there. These are the things that we had the capacity to vet. So if you have another program, if the school is implementing something that is already considered evidence-based, there are other ways to sort of raise that up and include that and use your foster grandparents to help them with the implementation for sure. So part of it is we really hope that this list continues to grow and it doesn't just stay with what we have here, particularly in the area of foster grandparents and senior companions. And so part of that is going to come from you all, and part of that is going to come from, us taking a more strategic look at how we evaluate existing foster grandparents and the impact that they have.
I'll just add one other thought to that. We had a meeting here recently with someone who's focused on absenteeism, and there is not, to the extent I'm aware, an evidence-based program in Appendix C on absenteeism right now. But just to think of it as an example, they shared that there's some new data that's required for different schools about absenteeism. So she thought that might be something that principals are focused on, and I think that's always kind of where to start. I know this probably isn't new to you, but it's just a re-emphasis of probably what you already do, which is, try to find the pain points for those principals or school leaders, whoever the constituent is, and whenever you can bring them a solution for what's already on their to-do list, what's already on their priority list, so much the better. Again, that's not groundbreaking, but it's a strategy that someone else shared with us recently.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thanks very much, Susan. Are there any other questions on the line? We'll also give you one last opportunity to drop a question into our Skype chat window. Okay. If there are no more questions, we'll let that wonderful hold music play us out. I'm actually going to mute the lines for just a second.
Thanks very much.
Presentation mode is now enabled.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. I do think that they were really great and helpful questions. One item, or not really one item, but the last couple of things that we want to mention is just to reaffirm that your state office is here to help you through the process. This is an augmentation and not a full competition, which means that they can help you with training and technical assistance in a way that they can't typically in full competitive processes. So do rely on your state office to be a thought partner, to strategize, to be a resource. They are there to support you, and I know they are eager to support you and help you take advantage of this opportunity. In addition, you'll find in Appendix C an email address where you can send questions, evidence-based@cns.gov. We'll take the questions that come in from there and use them to populate a public FAQ. If you have a question, chances are someone else has the same question. So please don't hesitate to use that because it is how we can get the best information out to all of you. I'm going to do one last check-in on Skype to see if there are any late-breaking questions. Any questions from our webinar attendees? Okay. If there are not, I think we will sign off. Just want to thank everybody for joining. Wish you the best of luck with this opportunity this year. I know we're really excited to see what you all are able to put together, and wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Erin?
Yeah, that's it. Have a great Thanksgiving. Hope you get some well-deserved downtime.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.